Today on the Relationship Renovation podcast, we're going to talk about a really important issue, which is that couples oftentimes react differently in stressful moments. They react differently just in any old moment. And understanding that, knowing what happens when you're not being mindful, and then having clear strategies of how to deal with moments where you and your partner pull apart. So stay attuned. Check this out. I know you're going to get something out of it.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Relationship Renovation podcast. I'm Tarah Kerwin.
And my name is EJ Kerwin, and we are going to jump right in on this because I think this is like a super, it's an important topic, and I think it's something that a lot of couples struggle with. And I'm going to introduce it through an experience that Tarah has, and I'm kind of like throwing this at you, Tarah.
You are. I have
so
no
here we
idea.
Go. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is how situations that you and your partner go through at the same time, like you're in the same situation, but yet you react differently in that situation, and how the ways you adjust, the way you show up in those moments can create problems in your relationship. And I think the easiest way is to just give you an example. Okay. So Tarah and I, we love to host. We've had many parties over the years. We have people to our house all the time, and we both love to do it. But we have very different ways in which we show up, and it's created some conflict between the two of us.
This is a good one, EJ.
Yeah,
okay.
Because so at parties, Tarah is like incredible. She is like engaging with everybody, and she's bouncing around, and she appears at least very like comfortable and just dynamic, right? And I enjoy parties as well. I enjoy social gatherings, but I'm a little like one thing is like I generally always like to be the one making drinks, or I like to be the one cooking. And so I have my own way of sort of like navigating that environment. And what it's created oftentimes is afterwards. And I also don't engage as much with Tarah. And the conflict that it's created is like we get done with these things that we've hosted. People have great times. We each kind of individually had a great time, but we were disconnected. And Tarah will come up to me afterwards and be like, "Where were you all night? Like, I didn't talk to you. Like, what's going on? Like, I kept trying to talk to you, or I'd come up to you and then you'd rush away to cut up the carne asada or whatever." And it's just a thing where we adapt differently in that environment, and it disconnects us.
Yeah, it keeps us just separate.
Yeah. And so that's just one example, but there's other things. That one is just like straight conflict. And we talked about this with a guest recently, Lisa Marini, about how like in conflict, our brains get activated and we go into our limbic responses. And in our case, like I'm more of a fleer, Tara's more of a fighter. And so we just want to talk about like, first of all, normalize, right? I mean, is this something that you see a lot with couples that you work with, Tarah?
Well, it's like, oh, I really wish he or she would be more like this when we're doing this. Like, I wish he or she would be more outgoing or more talkative or less aggressive. Or, it's always like, yeah, I wish this person was like me.
Yeah.
And that really creates a lot of invalidation for the other person, because that other person just has a very different, unique personality style. And again, like you said, we have very different ways of being in similar situations. And so we have to honor that, but we also have to be able to make a plan where it feels good for both of us. So like I know, for example, this party thing, like before a party now, we're like, okay, we're going to try to stay connected like every 20 to 30 minutes. We're going to give eye contact. We're going to smile. Does it happen all the time? No. But we really try to prepare right before the event so we know that we can stay connected. Because I know EJ loves doing his little barbecue, making the drinks, having his like one-on-one conversations where I'm just like zooming all over, trying to make sure I'm talking to everybody. And both are okay. But before, it used to not be okay with me. I would get mad, like, God, I wish he was more extroverted. Like, people are going to probably think that he doesn't care. And I just didn't understand like his level of comfort in crowds versus mine. Mine is super comfortable. EJ is way more introverted.
Yeah, I mean, this even happened like we had a photo shoot here for us and all of our staff, and so like everybody was here, everybody was talking, and at one point, like I walked out and I was like in our office, kind of by myself for a second, and Tara walked in, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And again, she was out there like interacting with everybody, bubbling around. And I was just like, it just gets like a little overwhelming for me. So when couples react differently in situations like that, Tara, what happens between them? What's like the result of it?
Well, when you don't have skills and you haven't skillfully addressed how to do this, I can't speak for other people. I can speak for people I've worked with, but it's almost like, oh, maybe this person's not for me. We're really different. Like, this doesn't make me feel happy. Kind of resentment, a lot of judging, and also blaming.
Yeah.
That's all the negative side
Yeah.
effects.
Yeah. And so definitely there's the judging of the other person. Like, why don't they react in a different way? Why don't they do it more like me? And then if you try to address it, sometimes then the other person feels like, I guess they feel judged.
They're
They
not
feel
okay.
like I'm not okay. What I'm doing is wrong. And because it's an automatic response, it kind of hits those negative core beliefs, right? Of I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not likable. And then what do we do then? Then we defend ourselves, like, and I've certainly done that in the party, scenario where you'll come to me and you'll be like, where were you on that? And I was like, well, I spoke with Michael, and then I was hanging out with Duncan, and then it's like I'm defending myself instead of us talking about like, hey, we do things differently. We react differently.
Yeah, we just really lose that supportive nature of one another, and we start to put each other in opposite playing fields, which then that's always very bad and toxic for relationships, because that's when other things now in the external can come in, like, oh, that person actually makes me feel really good and my partner doesn't. Or I might start to medicate a little bit more because I'm feeling really alone and like there's something wrong with me. So it's so important to create a strong support system together and really validate that each person's experience is okay just as it is, but that you guys are different. And how can you come together to compromise and plan how to make it enough for both of you? So you're not trying to get this other person to change who they are.
Yeah. I mean, so why do you think that is? Like, why don't we just automatically accept or be empathetic to our partner's reaction?
Really? Because we are like ego-driven jerk face assholes, man. Like, we want it to be on our terms. We want it to be about us, and we want to make sure that our environment is reflecting what I like.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to be different than that. Like, just given and our culture too. It's very like instant gratification and make sure you make me feel really important. And it's your job to, there's so many different factors, but really ego driven, right? It's really hard for people to be present and mindful
Really
and
notice what's going on.
Aware.
I think it also, there's this weird like veer off course that we do as couples where like, oftentimes the things early on in our relationship that we saw about our partner, because when we originally met them, they had the same instinctive responses. They reacted to the same way in certain environments, and we liked that about them. But then at a certain point, it's like there's this thing where we start wanting them to do things like we do them. And then when they ultimately don't because they're a different person, then we get agitated by it. And it's this really like interesting thing. I mean, does that make sense?
Absolutely. Or even in the beginning, like, I just really wanted you to fall madly in love with me. So I'm like, I love watching football. I totally do. And then dun dun dun, we're in it for a couple of years. And I'm like,
She really doesn't like football.
I actually sometimes do, but I was just like, oh yeah, I was just doing that so he would fall madly in love with me.
Yeah.
And think I was like the coolest chick on earth. Yeah. And now my true colors are showing. Sorry, honey. We kind of trick each other.
Yeah.
Not purposefully. We would just want to be loved and we want the other person to think that we're the coolest thing ever. But then it kind of shows up later and it's like, you just like I thought you loved watching football. Like you used to do that all the time. Well,
So, I mean, it might be a useful thing for you out there, our listeners, is, if you're identifying like, yeah, there are like just ways where like there's certain situations where we just diverge, where we pull apart, we do things differently, and that causes conflict in our relationship. The first step in using this as an actionable thing that you and your partner can do might be like sitting down in a non-activated moment and making a list of like, hey, where are the situations that we pull apart? When are the times that we do things very differently? And then what happens? Or just like, what are the different ways in which we react in those moments?
okay. And I want to just name a few because I'm like writing these down as we're talking. Maybe it's around parenting. Maybe it's around spending of money, financing, budgeting. Maybe it's around going shopping at Target together. Like I get so excited to go to Target and just like look at all the new stuff. And EJ looks like he's being tortured when we're in Target. And I'll be in my internal body. I'm like, God, why does he have to ruin this? I only get out to Target like once in a while. It's like my Disneyland. And here he has a big freaking lump on a log.
Well, I don't even, that's the great thing about you guys doing this exercise is I don't even realize it. So this happened like 2 weeks ago. We were out of town someplace, and on the way back, we stopped at a bunch of outlet stores. We were shopping for, we were getting like basketball shoes for one of our kids. And I just thought I was just doing what we were doing, and we had gotten a coffee, and it seemed like a lot of fun. And Tara, like, I could tell all of a sudden was like super agitated with me. And I was like, I have no idea what's going on right now. Why are you pissed off at me?
It was more of like, I wish I could just spend a couple of hours here and go to the Marc Jacobs outlet and go to all these things. But I know that EJ doesn't want to do that because he wants to get home. So I'm going to like totally deny my need of wanting to go to these outlet malls.
That's so good because in that moment at the outlet stores, you want to just like delve into the experience and take your time. And I'm like super utilitarian in those moments. I'm like, okay, Joe needs shoes. All right, let's go to the shoe shop. All right, let's put on the 3 shoes. All right, which ones feel good? All right. And I'm just like checking off a list. And so I'm like, my shopping is like get it done. Your shopping is like
an adventure.
I didn't even ever realize that.
Well, now you know. So how do we make a compromise around this?
Well,
honey?
I mean, it starts with
we're doing this right on the fly.
Well, I mean, I think so. If we're role modeling, okay, you and your partner have this situation, you react differently, you identify how you react differently. Then, okay, how do you get to agreements? Because that's what Dr. Santakan talks about, like. The highest predictor for relationship is not necessarily attraction and all of that stuff. It's making agreements and hold them to it. To me, the agreement that you and I would make in that situation is like, okay, we're going to identify, we're walking into this outlet mall. Are we here to get her done and get out of here? Or are we here to like we're going to stay for 2 hours or we're going to stay for 3 hours and this is going to be an experience. It's not just going to be about getting the shoes. But if we don't do that,
and we didn't,
that prepare plan, we did not, it's going to be problematic, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, then I know, like if you're like, hey, I just want this to be like a fun experience, I can make that mind shift.
And it totally piggybacks again that last podcast the guest speaker Lisa Marini, game plan.
Make a game plan.
Get into your huddle.
Yeah.
And make it freaking work. And it's going to be so much more like we're on the same team instead of how dare he want to go home and watch the U of A basketball game. I can't go to Marc Jacobs outlet mall. Okay.
Well, and if we huddle up before and we make the plan and I say to Tara, like, man, we got like wicked traffic getting out of Phoenix. And like, it's important that like we're out of here in an hour. Otherwise, it's going to take us 3 hours to get home. I know she's reasonable. Like she's going to probably be like, okay. But if she doesn't know that in my mind, I'm looking at my watch every 10 minutes, thinking about all that traffic we're going to hit, That's an unrealistic expectation for her to read my mind.
I'm not a mind reader.
She is not a mind
It's
reader.
another
That's for
podcast
dang
of ours.
sure. All right. So I think we've done a good job of like, what are the times you and your partner do things very differently? Looking at each one, what is the different ways in which we might go in that moment?
Mm-hmm.
Setting up a plan with your partner of like, okay, when we go shopping is something we got to make sure we're aware of. When we're talking about finances, when we're talking about disciplining kids, like all of those, and then just preparing for it.
Daily, right? Because you can't say, oh, yeah, next time we go to Target, honey, I really want you to be very excited and be with me and be on an adventure, and then expect you to remember that 2 weeks later. You have to, in the moment before, prep yourselves, make that game plan. There was also one more thing I think it's important that not only do we kind of have our own ways of being in certain situations, there's also something to be said around like morning and evening routines and like making sure, because like I'm less of a morning person, more of a night person. EJ's more of a morning person, less of a night person. He wants to go to bed early. I want to go to bed later. He wants to wake up early. I want to wake up later. And it did cause a lot of disconnection, I would say, because I'm like, I just want him to stay up until midnight with me and watch Dateline. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's not my thing. But now I understand we just have these different rhythms. And again, that's another thing to talk about. Like, hey, how do we, like, you're a morning person, I'm an evening person. How do we like make it so we're still connected in the morning and the evening, but still honor that like that's your routine and that's my routine? And I feel like we've done a really great job of kind of melding that together.
Yeah.
We get up in the morning, we spend 20 minutes together, coffee, and then in the evening, we watch a show. We might do some popcorn. I go to bed earlier now. EJ wishes he could go to bed at 9:30, but he's like compromised to 10:30. So we've made it work. But we wouldn't have even known that we had to do that had we not started to like go down that rabbit hole of like feeling disconnected and like, again, me wanting EJ to be a night person, but he's not.
I mean, this just speaks to how important it is to be mindful about your relationship, about each of your rhythms. And it's just an unrealistic expectation that the multitude of external things happening in our lives, that they're just going to naturally line up. But unfortunately, what we see is that's what people's expectations are, that there should just be this like natural calibration within relationship that creates a majority of the time a sense of harmony. And it just doesn't happen,
No.
you know?
Again, it's communicating, it's talking about what you both need, it's about honoring each other's needs, it's about really often talking about how you are different and how you can be with those differences together.
Yeah. And then when you do, it feels like success, you know, because
Winning,
yeah,
winning,
one of the
we are
hardest
winning.
parts about this is when you're having repeated moments with your partner that feel like, man, this just does not work. And unfortunately, the assumption people make is that like, well, because it's not naturally happening, we're not meant to be together. And what we're saying is like, no, it's just you guys have to figure out a way to make it work.
And even like, so I'm thinking, because this was just 2 weeks ago, I'm like, how did we not do that? Like, we're always like, we're going to mess it up. We're going to totally forget. But then you remember that you forgot and you're like, actually, no, it's going to be really helpful if we have that little plan before we go into the outlet malls. So I guess give yourselves grace if you forget to do this once in a while, but just keep practicing it, talking about it, identifying the ways where you show up differently that might kind of irk the other person.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, like, sometimes when we get to the portion of the podcast where we're really talking about solutions and when you do things in a different way, how wonderful it feels. And that's 100% true. But what we also know is that it takes a lot of work in a lot of various different ways around knowing the way your attachment history, like having like straight up tools for when you get activated in these moments, of having healthy communication habits. All of those things sort of layer in, and that's why on a broader sense it's so important to have a way to do this work together. And that's where our Relationship Renovation at Home program is it's just an amazing way to shift the way you and your partner understand yourselves and each other, right? And that program gives you a structured way where you, over a few months, you can make your relationship a priority. You can watch these videos together. You can download the lessons and then ask each other questions, be curious about one another, build intimacy, communicate better. So 100% to just recommend, guys, check out the Relationship Renovation at Home program. There's a link in our show notes. If you go to our website, relationshiprenovation.com, you can download a free sample just to check it out. We believe so much into it that we give a 30-day money-back guarantee on it, because we've just had so many couples have incredible experiences with it. So check that out. And
we always try to make it very affordable, because we know that there's a lot of couples that don't have that, either time resources or financial resources. So it's our heart of hearts to provide this to the world, really, because we love love. We believe that it takes a lot of skills and knowledge in order to make relationship work. We know from our own personal experience, which is why we've created a couples counseling center. And it's important for us. It's important work. And again, your relationship, your family deserves freedom and a great team.
Absolutely. And we appreciate our community that's just building every single week. It's just getting bigger and bigger. Please continue to let people know about our podcast. It's it's awesome when we get your ratings and your reviews on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen. So please, we appreciate when you do that. We love it when we get emails from you guys at info@relationshiprenovation.com that give us ideas for topics. So please reach out, connect with us, share our podcast. We know when relationships are healthy, families are healthy. When families are healthy, communities are healthy. And our guiding principle here is we want to make this world a better place. We want to help people connect. We want to help people love each other.
Thank you for that, EJ. That was beautiful. And as always, when I close out, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. We all deserve amazing, amazing support and love in our relationships.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Me and you just singing on the train. Me and you listening to the rain. Me and you, we are the same.